My life? Hey guys, thanks for reaching out, Coaching with Chris. They just told me I was live, so I was trying to work. I am super excited to be able to have Katie on today. As you know, she's the CEO of AIME, and I've never met a harder working woman than her. Her travel schedule, how much she puts into this industry. I am just honored that we get to spend a few minutes with her to be able to talk about the industry and what's in our future. So Katie, welcome to Coaching with Chris.
Hey, how's it going?
Are you in Dallas?
I'm in Dallas. Like, this is the first time I think anybody's seen my house. I am in Dallas. I'm at home. I get to actually do this from my own. I mean, I'm in my kitchen, but like, it's not a hotel, so that's a win.
That is a win. Like, yeah. You know, I was talking about the whole hotel industry, and a friend gave me a quote the other day that said, when we steal something, an idea from our own industry, we're a copycat. But when we steal something from another industry and bring it to our industry, we're an innovator. And I was talking about the whole hotel. Do you have a favorite hotel brand?
I do. I'm a big believer in being loyal to your travel brands so that you get all of the benefits. So I'm like Marriott all the way.
Okay.
Because you can find so many of them. Like, no matter what happens, there's always another Marriott down the road. I know just out at y'all's event not that long ago, the hotel that we were all in was a Marriott and had this like huge pipe burst, big leak, water leak, all this stuff. And we had no problem at 3 a.m. finding another Marriott 5 minutes down the road that like took us in, got us taken care of, did everything that was necessary. So there are times, hopefully it's very rare for most people, but I find myself in situations more than I would like where something goes sideways when you're traveling. Having that loyalty helps a lot. It makes people a lot more willing to move things around for you and try to help get things done. I mean, it's the same with any relationship, but in the travel industry in particular. So I'm a Marriott girl through and through.
Yeah, I love Marriott too. Then how about airlines? I suppose American.
You have to be. I'm in DFW. So American is Karis would love for me to say that I'm starting to pivot to Southwest, but I just won't do it. I can't do it. So I'm American Airlines, but with both of those, some of it was inherited too. Like, my dad traveled a lot for work. And so when I was a toddler, he set up an American Airlines Advantage account for me. So every time I was on a plane, it started to accrue when I was really little. So I've got
that's a good idea
of miles. Yeah. From all the basketball travel that I did, all the volleyball travel, family vacations, like anytime we went anywhere, he had account set up for me. And then for my brother when we were really young. So we've just always, it instills that loyalty from day one, because now I've got all these benefits that I need to use and leverage, and I don't want to go to another airline and lose all of it. Right. So I'm American and Marriott for life over here.
What would be one thing that most people wouldn't know about Katie?
Oh, goodness. What's one thing most people don't know about me? Well, I think the more people get to know me, they're realizing this, but I'm a huge sports fan. So I started when I went to college, my entire life. In fact, my parents have home videos of me when I was really young. I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That was like dream number one. In the Dallas area, there was this woman, her name was Gina Miller, who was like always on doing all the sideline reporting, pregame, postgame, everything when I was young. And her and Bob Costas were like the two people. I said, one day, like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be somebody. And with sport, yes, I love the game, but I love the storytelling that comes along with it, because sports are so often so much more than the activity that you see on the court or on the field. There's so much that goes into those personalities and how the teams are constructed. And I've studied that so much throughout my life. It's how I make a lot of business decisions. It often relates back to athletics in some form or fashion. And so from very, very young, I mean, I was running around in Cowboys boots and Rangers t-shirts when I was 3 and 4 years old, talking about baseball to anybody who would listen. And that like love of statistics and the ability to remember lots of information and know when to pull it out when it's the most relevant. That's a skill that's come in so handy for me later in life, because I have the ability now to recall conversations that I had even years ago, because I got so used to studying statistics when I was really young, because I wanted to know more about athletes. I wanted to know where they came from and where their leverage lied and what skills they had, and looking at the up and comers versus those that had been around and comparing generations to one another. That was the majority of my life until I got into my mid-20s. I studied sports broadcasting in college. I actually worked for the Texas Rangers and for the Dallas Cowboys for a short period of time. So I dabbled my toes in the sports world. Now I would prefer to just go to the game and not have to work at the game, but it drives a lot of the way that I think about business and life and relationships. And it often comes back to experiences that surround sports in some form or fashion.
Yeah, my favorite hire is college athletes by far. Favorite.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And number two is I always ask my AEs and LOs, I'm like, why is it that a athlete knows more about their stats than you?
Yeah.
And if we know our stats, then we know our mistakes and where we need to go make a difference. And I feel like an athlete fights so hard to continue to be better, whether on a losing team, which I feel like some of us in the industry, depending on where you're at, you could feel like my season's not a winning season this year. And what am I going to do to turn it over to be a winning season for next year? That's exciting for me. I know it's been exciting for you because of all the changes that you've done for AIME. And I feel like you do have a winning season this year. And we want to keep that momentum going. So you start in this role, you get this role, and I feel like I've watched this build up and now this huge momentum that you have today. And, if we're sitting and having a real conversation with Katie, what are we concentrating on now to really make the industry better for AIME?
Yeah,
What's
I
AIME
think
doing?
for so long, for the first few years that AIME was around, and even the first couple of years that I was in this role, so much of the focus was on bringing brokers together, right? That was the core of the conversation. It was, how do we get everybody who's in the channel, whether it's brokers from different areas of the country, lenders that we know that are leaders within the wholesale space, how do we get that group to come together and agree on common ground? Because one of the greatest benefits of working in wholesale is that there's a business model for everybody. One of the greatest challenges in representing a trade organization is that there's a different business model for everybody. There are so many different opinions and personalities and perspectives on how you can operate the best way, right? Everybody's got their own version of what's the best, which is so great for consumers, but also makes it a bit more challenging when you're trying to bring this group together and agree on common ground, because you've got people who feel very strongly, they're all business owners who have their own opinion on how we should operate. So a lot of that focus originally was, okay, let's get to the core. Like, what's the 80% that we on? How do we represent that together? And now that we've found that, and we found a lot of that common ground, and we've been able to have conversations with people who feel differently but can agree on the big things, it's all about telling everybody else in this space. And that's where I think so much of the advocacy work that we're doing comes into play. Advocacy sometimes gets a little bit of a boring notion, because it's like, oh, politics, I don't care about that, I don't want to get involved. But there's so much more to advocacy than politics or policy even. And there's awareness and education and relationships. Those three, that's the core of what we're doing every single day. And I think if we're looking at how do we want to take all of the great things that we know exist in wholesale and get them out there to a broader audience, have people understand what all of the benefits are, but then also make sure that we're protected should things shift again. That all comes down to representation, advocacy, and out. That's the core. And so that's really been our main focus really for the last 12 months, I would say, since this time last summer, when we really started taking off with the advocacy fundraising that we're doing and the meetings that we're having, really making sure that we're not just introducing ourselves and letting people know that we're here. Now we're at the point where we can start to share what we think is right. And we're coming to the table, not just with problems, but also with solutions, which has helped us get a lot further than we expected to go in a very short window of time, because we're bringing people ideas and solutions and things that benefit their constituents. We're not coming at it and saying, we're brokers, this is what we want you to do for us. It's, we're brokers and this is what we want to do for our consumers, and here's how you can help us. And every consumer we help is somebody that might vote for you. And if you support us and we support them, it creates this really great triangle relationship that is beneficial for everybody involved. And so advocacy is definitely the area that we are the most focused on right now, and probably will be for the foreseeable future. There's a lot of great things that we've built in the past that we want to continue to evolve. But as far as new concepts, new things that are really at the center of our conversations, it's advocacy and outreach is where it's at right now.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that I've really watched over the last 6 to 8 months was, look what conversations you've got to start. Like, you've started a lot of amazing conversations with some really powerful people that actually could move the needle. And this is the turning point of momentum. Back to even a sports analysis type of, I feel like the game has shifted. And I started off as a broker. I sold because I was scared. And it was the change. And it was 08. It wasn't 09. I didn't even know about how bad 09 would actually be. But it was 08. And things were changing. And I had no say. I had no real group to be able to connect to get say. And that broker industry slowly faded over. And now look at the momentum of how far we've come since 09.
Yeah, it really has changed so much. And I think the thing that matters the most to me, and I'm going to say this on behalf of Brendan McKay as well, because I'm very confident that he would agree with me. When the two of us are working on this together, because it's an equal partnership between the two of us. We each bring something different to the table when we're having conversations or representing people or walking into meetings. But at the end of the day, what Brendan and I want people to understand is that we care about this stuff so much. It's not a job. We're not just out here. Trust me, there are things that Brendan and I could be doing with our time that would be much more lucrative than spending our time working on advocacy and policy for the mortgage industry in DC. But we truly care about it and we believe in it. And we also understand the impact that it can have on businesses that exist today, but also future businesses. There's so much with housing and with the mortgage industry that needs to evolve the way that other consumer-centric industries have evolved. We're behind, right? I mean, mortgage and healthcare, housing and healthcare, as I like to say, those two, they're at the center of every major decision you ever make as a consumer, but they're also two industries that typically lag decades behind others that people engage with on a daily basis. You're not making a mortgage decision every day or a healthcare decision every day, like you are shopping online or engaging in social media. But those other industries are what lead the trends of how consumers expect to engage in decisions long term. And housing hasn't evolved at the same pace. There's what we need to do to catch up, to look a little bit more like the people who are buying homes or living in homes or selling their homes, or what the housing space is going to look like in the next decade. We've got a lot of people in the mortgage space that are fantastic. They've done great work over the last 30 years, but they're going to be ready to take a step back soon. And we don't have the next wave of people coming in yet to say, here's the direction that we're going. Or those that are ready to step back and retire, what's the legacy that you're leaving behind? Did it change? Does it look the exact same it did 20 years ago? That all goes into advocacy. That's all stuff that matters so much to me and to Brendan. We want to represent every person who wants to buy a house, every mortgage broker who wants to help people get into a home. And it has changed significantly in the last 10 years, but it hasn't changed enough. There's still a lot of work to do, and a lot of conversations to be had. And I think as long as we continue the focus of I say it's my mantra that I tell everybody all the time. My goal in life is to help people help more people. I am never going to be the one to come up with some crazy harebrained idea that's going to change the world, but I know a lot of people that can. And my job is to help those people build their businesses, scale their businesses. If I can help you, you can go help 10 more. And that's how we approach every single advocacy conversation that we have. We want to help the people who can go have the greatest impact out there and really make sure that home ownership and mortgage and even owning a small business, look at it from the other side. That's also the American dream. We talk so often about how owning a home is the American dream, and it is, but being an entrepreneur and owning your own business or working with people that you care about, that's also a huge part of being here in this country and having all of these opportunities. And you get that in the mortgage space in a way that you don't in very many others. And it doesn't require a certain level of education or a certain background or knowing the right people. Literally anybody who wants to start their own brokerage can do it, as long as they're keeping the consumer at the center of all of the decisions they're making, and they have a great chance of being successful. And that's who we represent, and that's where we want to continue to see the evolution move forward. Not just the work that we've done the last couple of years, but where we want to take it over the next couple of decades.
Yeah. Wow. I think you said a lot. I hope, maybe if you're listening to this, go back and listen to that again, because there was a lot of cool nuggets in there. One of the things that I just want to make sure that we talk about is before we maybe lead into, a good topic that everyone's talking about is that what you've done with the states. So like, I'm starting to listen to this. I'm saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to get along, or get involved, but this is a national organization. This is, I'm never going to be able to connect. And, I did a lot of the road shows. And by the way, if you haven't gone to the road show, you have to get in and go to that. It is a great event, not only networking, but just meeting other fellow brokers that you could be able, and everyone's there is willing to share. But your state levels, I think, have made a big difference. And it's just at the cusp of really, truly growing. Tell us about that. And how to be involved if I'm not currently involved.
Yeah. So we launched our state captains program because everything's a sports metaphor. So we have our state captains. I have been talking about this concept of decentralizing and having local level leadership for probably 2 years. I've got some folks that joined me on the team when I first took this position, and I started seeding this idea out there and seeing what the responses looked like. But I also knew we weren't ready for it at the time. We needed to build the foundation at the federal level before we could start to get into state specific work, because all of the states are important to us, but without a national reputation and a national brand, it was going to be really difficult to have any level of impact. And we didn't want to decentralize so quickly that we lost our leverage. And so the idea was to focus for about a year, maybe a year and a half at the federal level, see what we could get done, and then start to launch state-specific programs. Once we got our feet wet, we understood what worked, what didn't work nationally, how we can make some edits and some changes to the concept locally. So we launched State Captains in April. We were expecting a couple hundred applicants. We had thousands, which was incredible. And we only have 2 to 5 positions for every state. So for the number of roles that we had available, we had 10 times, 15 times, whatever the number was, the number of applicants come in, which just goes to show you how many people want to get involved and care about stations and want to give back. Like you said, there's so many people in the broker channel that are willing to give. It's not a competitive environment in the way that you're trying to cut people down. It's competitive in that you want to make everybody around you better, because if your neighbor's better or your competition's better, then that just makes you look better down the road as far as the industry is concerned. So we launched State Captains. We have most of our states covered. I think we have about 45 right now that are in a pretty good spot. So we do have a few still open, but they are starting to they're hosting meetings on either a monthly or a quarterly basis, depending on the state and how many members we have in that area. We'll start doing regional meetings here after National Mortgage Broker Day, which is coming up next week, which I will touch on. Big week, very big week. We're actually bringing all of our state captains out to DC, and they will be spending an entire day, and it is a full day, really getting into all of the weeds on how to lobby locally, how to talk with local elected officials, testifying in Congress, how we do fundraising locally to make sure we have the support that's necessary to be able to continue these initiatives, really identifying how to have conversations with people so that you can tell the story appropriately. Because as much as myself and Brendan would love to be in every single meeting all the time, it's just simply not possible with how many different things that we have going on. So this is our group of delegates that will be working at the ground level, making sure that any state-specific conversations, and there's a lot of things that are regulated by the state individually, not by the federal government. And so we're really starting to split those conversations into two categories. And our state captains are the ones that are taking the lead on the research, the early conversations, the legislative proposals. So they're actually going to work on putting some of the policy proposals together so that we can help support however is necessary from the national level. But they're really starting to take off. The last couple of months has been a lot of training, getting people comfortable, making sure the program is working. National Mortgage Broker Day next week, we'll be doing tons of training. And then we have a full day where we're taking all of these folks and introducing them to members of Congress from their own state or their own district back home, so we can make those local connections with people so that when it is time to push on specific topics, they already have relationships that they've started to develop. And it's just going to go gangbusters from here. We're looking at PAC management is different at the federal level than it is at the state level. So we're looking at a couple of state-specific PACs that we'd like to get launched before the end of the year or early in 2024. We're looking at how we leverage local delegates. So I'll use Texas as the example because that's where I'm at. We have 5 state captains in Texas that are all over the state, but we also have delegates. So kind of their right hand that's one step removed that can actually help have conversations with more of our members in each city. Because there's a lot of city-specific stuff, especially when you look at states like California or Texas or Florida. Each region of the state also has different things that impact housing policy in different ways. And so we want to make sure that we've got this spider web network that goes all the way out so that anybody who wants to get involved has the opportunity to participate. But the number one thing you can do is join that monthly state meeting. I know there's some for Arizona and Florida this week. I'm sure there's others that I'm not mentioning, but there are, if you have questions or you're in a state and you want to get involved, just reach out to our team and we'll get you added to whatever the next state legislative meeting is. But there's some cool stuff that the captains are working on. We're excited to see how that evolves.
Yeah. Now I'm just thinking, how cool would this be to really truly get involved, be able to support, connect into the state. It takes lots of voices to be able to make this movement and this team. And I almost want to say army that you're building to be able to make this movement. It's incredible. And if you're not involved, you got to, you just simply got to. It's the one thing that we've probably learned from the past is that we are going to have a voice, and leading into voice, that is probably one of the big things that, that we struggle with. I would say pull my hair out, but I don't have any, so I don't know if I can do that. But is trigger leads. And I think it's been a big topic. I think we've gone back and forth. There's nothing we can do. Maybe there's something we can do. And I know it's been a forefront just from a lot of people coming to you, the members coming to you and saying, what can we do? And where do you see that thing? I mean, do we got a shot?
We do. I think, so I'm going to preface what I'm going to say about trigger leads with one specific comment that's been really important to us. When I agreed to start getting involved and really started pushing our work in DC, and when I asked Brendan to join me, we had a very honest conversation up front. And we said, our role is to be honest and transparent, pragmatic, and willing to work with other people. Those are the things that are going to get us into more conversations. If we come in hot and heavy and we're swinging like we're angry about what happened in the past, we're not going to have the same opportunities. But we also felt that the honesty and the transparency with our members was really critical. We don't ever want to give people the impression that something is possible if it's not. We want to have conversations about how we amend or we edit or we meet in the middle. We find compromises to make the situation better, even if it's not perfect, right? We've got to get the needle moving and show as a trade group that we are people who will meet in the middle and that we're a group that's willing to work through any issues that arise, not just throw in the towel and say, well, that's not good enough, so we're going to oppose it. And we took that same idea and that same concept into the conversation about trigger leads. And I think it actually worked really well in our advantage with where we're at right now. We started having very serious conversations about trigger leads at the end of last year, but also we're aware with the new Congress coming in January after the elections in the fall, we were in a bit of a holding period on when we could actually get something done. So we started meeting with offices in the fall, making sure they were aware of what trigger leads even are. Because if you're not in the industry, that term on its own doesn't really mean anything to you. We also started having conversations about consumer privacy and data privacy in other industries. And that's where a lot of my research came in of how is this being handled in other spaces versus how it's being handled in housing right now. So when the new Congress came in and became official in January, we started having more meetings with either folks that were reelected or new folks that had been assigned to the committees that matter to us. So on the House side, it's financial services. On the Senate side, it is banking and finance. They're comparable committees on each side. And what we found was that there was one or two people that were interested, but also didn't really understand how bad trigger leads really were. And there was one member of Congress, Richie Torres, who was willing to put forth a bill proposal, but it was identical to what he's introduced in the past. So we actually met with his staff in February or March about the concerns we had with the previous language that had been introduced. And we said, here's where, if you reintroduce this again, this is our concern as a trade organization. And it's probably an opinion that many of our members would not love, but it was also honest because we represent brokers, but we also represent the wholesale channel. And there were I had some, and Brendan had some concerns about unintended consequences with an outright ban of trigger leads and how that could trickle down into other facets of the industry. Most importantly, the asset valuation for the secondary market. Because if you don't have the opportunity to solicit your portfolio, it becomes really hard to have a value on that asset when it's being sold. And unfortunately, that office had some very specific opinions on how they wanted to move forward. And so they introduced the bill again as is. It's the second or third Congress that this bill has been introduced, identical text every time. When that happened, we made a statement and said, hey, the intention is good, but the implementation needs some work. We had some members that didn't love that, but we also felt like it was really important for us to be honest and say, we feel like this bill is dead in the water. We don't think that this has a chance to move forward. And if we shift all of our resources and we throw our weight behind this, we're throwing our weight behind something that we know isn't going to happen. And that's not the best use of your money or of our time to represent you. We need to keep working on things that we know have a chance to move forward. Fast forward, we had more conversations about trigger leads. We had more conversations with different members, and we were able to have some really meaningful conversations with two other major housing trade groups. And I'm not going to name them because those were closed door meetings, but they're big players in the housing space. And we were able to communicate with them ideas that we have on how we can make everybody happy, both servicers, lenders, but also originators, since we are collectively representing the entire industry and not just a single channel. That is the bill that was recently introduced. It was about a month ago. There's another trigger lead bill that was introduced by Representative John Rose from Tennessee in conjunction with the Tennessee mortgage bankers, with the MBA, and with us. Almost every major housing trade group has now signed on to the new version of this bill that Representative Rose has introduced. We do feel like there is a legitimate chance that we can make this happen. There's still work to be done. It's certainly not a shoo-in or an easy feat, but this bill has a very specific exemption that has been important to us since day one, and that is, as an originator, a lender, or a servicer, if you have a pre-existing credit relationship with the consumer, you are still able to call them if there is a credit activity that triggers a lead. And that's important from the asset valuation side for servicers. It's important for lenders in the way that they approach the industry, particularly those that want to stay in wholesale that are now getting more into subservicing because there's a lot of opportunity there. We've got a lot of lender partners that get those credit monitoring triggers and actually give those leads back to their brokers. So there's a business avenue for the broker as well, and any originator that has a relationship with the consumer. So we're able to tackle both sides of the argument. One, that we want to minimize activity, especially unsolicited activity. Two, we're not selling information that is private to somebody that didn't have consent from the consumer to have their information shared. I liken it to healthcare. There's a lot of things that I compare between healthcare and housing. And you would never walk into a doctor's office and get a physical and then expect that information be sold to every drug company out there to start soliciting you for any sort of ailment that they think you might have or that they want to convince you that you have, right? That doesn't happen. There's other ways that drug companies can buy that information, but it doesn't happen from your doctor. That shouldn't happen from your originator either. You're having a private conversation about your financial health that's not dissimilar to your physical health. It's a representation of who you are and what you've built over a very long period of time. You don't walk around with your credit score tattooed on your forehead for a reason. It shouldn't be shared without you knowing that it's being shared. Consumers still have the ability to opt into credit triggers or information if they want to. If they're shopping online, they can still go out and shop with other folks if they'd like to. There's protections for the consumer the way that the bill is structured as well. But we're also prioritizing people that the consumer knew previously. You knew your originator. Even if it was 5 years ago, you trusted them at one point to give them your credit score. There's a reason for that person to reach out and have a conversation with you to make sure that you're being taken care of and you're in good hands. So it's very long-winded. I'm very passionate about this topic because it's been going on for a long time, and our members are very, very adamant that we see some semblance of change. I think the way this bill is structured and with the people who are now backing it, this is maybe the one chance that we will have anytime soon where we think we can get it done. And the one thing that I'll push back to anybody who's listening and why it's important to stay involved on a consistent basis, Congress turns over every 2 years. So we have a 2-year window in this congressional cycle to get this bill actually introduced, to get it into a package, and to get it passed. That has to happen because when Congress shifts again, it has to be introduced again. And so you might not be starting from zero, but you're backing way down, right? Each time Congress turns over, each time there's a new cycle, there's a lot of change and there's new personalities. There's a new party potentially that's in the majority versus the minority that's going to shift how people approach decisions. So we have an opportunity right now. This is our chance to make as much noise as we can, to raise the money that's necessary to be able to push from the lobbying and the legislative angles across the board, and to really work hard to get this into a package and get it in front of the committee before the end of the year, because next year's election cycle is going to be wild. It's obviously a presidential election year. We all are expecting politics to kind of go off their rocker in 2024. Everybody's going to have a lot of opinions about who's getting elected and in what way. And the focus shifts from getting work done to getting reelected. And we need to get this thing moved forward while people are focused on getting the work done and not focused on the things that they need to do back home to ensure their reelection. Yep,
that's cool. Wow. Yeah, I never realized that this is how close you are. You are very close.
And we are. You're right there.
Your strategy is amazing. It's perfect. It's transparent. It's honest. It's upfront. But yet you stick up for all parties involved into mortgage. And you brought up some really good points, especially somebody that maybe did a loan 5 years ago, that you did pull that credit and you should still have an ability and an access to be able to connect. So as we wrap this up, Katie, I know trigger's got to be a big goal of yours, but what's like one more goal that you're like, I got to get done by the end of the year?
Oh, by the end of the year.
Or do you not think of it like that?
So I think more in so depends on, as far as AIME is concerned, I think 3-year timelines. As far as our advocacy is concerned, I think 2-year cycles, so that we mirror those election cycles in those congressional sessions. Mm-hmm. But I would say by the end of this year, we want to make sure that our captain's program is churning out policy proposals. I think that's a really important step. So year one for us at the federal level was a lot of introductions, a lot of, hey, here's who we are, here's what mortgage brokers are, here's what market share looked like 5 years ago versus what it looks like now, which I truly shocked so many people. So many of our conversations early on were about the difference between a broker and a banker, and not throwing one under the bus, but truly just explaining, here's how we operate differently. Here's how the consumers that we help are helped in different ways. There are different ways to get a mortgage, and here's what it looks like, because those terms are used interchangeably by people who aren't in the industry a lot. Mm-hmm. But year two for us was policy proposals. It was, okay, here's a problem, here's a solution. We found a problem. We also are bringing you the answer, and all you have to do is put your name on it and submit the bill text. And that's how we've been able to get our disabled veteran tax exemption bill passed in so many states in such a short period of time, because we found a problem, we identified the solution, we articulated the story in one page. It's a one-page infographic that explains exactly what it was, how we fixed it, the economic impact it can have on your state. We submit that to members of Congress or elected officials back home, and all of a sudden, 7, 8, 9 states later, we're in a position now where we can have conversations directly with the VA very soon on making a general guideline change across the board. So the state-specific stuff, I think, is really important in making sure that we don't just have people there having meetings and saying hello and introducing themselves, so that we're really starting to get policy recommendations from each individual state, so that that program by the next election cycle has really cemented itself as something that can be sustainable on its own. That's the other thing that I think is so important, that is not something that I think CEOs really talk about, but I think it's really important, especially in a role where I represent a trade organization. I don't represent a private entity or even a public entity, right? I mean, I represent a nonprofit trade group. My ultimate goal for AIME and for my role at this company is to make myself replaceable. If I'm building things and I'm required to be at the center of all of those programs, then I haven't really built anything. I built ideas around myself, but that's not something that will last for a long time. And whether I'm here for 1 year or 10 years or 100 years, doesn't matter. One day I won't be. And one day Brendan won't be. And one day our other leaders will be focused on other areas of their life, and they deserve the opportunity to go build, do, live, love, whatever those things are that they're interested in. And these programs that we're getting off the ground, and the way that we've shifted the structure of AIME and the Broker Action Coalition and the backpack, that's all done very purposefully to make sure that it is creating a self-sufficient and a self-sustaining platform that anybody can come in and help lead and guide, but nobody has the ability to tear down. No one person can ruin what we've built, but no one person can take the credit for anything that we build going forward either. It's going to take, like you said, an army of people that are focused on similar conversations and similar goals and objectives. And that is the ultimate goal. Whether that takes another year or another 10 years, it doesn't matter what that time period is. My objective is to make sure that every program that we launch has the ability to sustain itself without me having to stay involved over a long period of time. Not that I don't want to know what's going on and I don't want to be helpful, but they need to survive without me. And they need to survive without Brendan, and they need to survive without Tom, and fill in the blank. Every leader that we have, they need to survive without the people that are currently leading, because every single one of us has goals and ideas and dreams and things that we want to do. And there are lots of other people that want to be involved at this level as well. That's what good trade groups, true trade groups, have the ability to turn their leadership over on a consistent basis, but not sway from the course. And that's what we're focused on right now. And I think for this year, for our state captains, if we get them to a place where the program is cemented, they have the ability to host meetings, create policy proposals, start conversations without direct oversight from the federal level, then the next couple of years we'll have a lot of opportunity to make some really great change and to expand the program even more and go from 100 people representing those states to 1,000 people representing those states that all have been trained, that all understand how this works. And that just makes us more efficient.
Yeah, that's amazing. Look, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of your team. I'm proud of the work, the many hours, the time traveling, like all you've done. And look, for us, and for us as a wholesale lender, for all of the brokers out there. And next week's a big week. We get to celebrate, we get to make a difference, but we need you, everyone that's listening to this call, to be involved. Get involved at the state level, get involved at the national level. Go to AIME Fuse is coming up here. Like all of these things make a difference, but all of us together are way more powerful than if we're just trying to do it by ourselves, which is the mistake that happened years and years ago to me. So look, if you're not involved, where do I go to get involved?
You can go to aimgroup.com and we've got all the information that you need. If you have any questions, always email us info@aimgroup.com. Sean, Nathan, the entire membership group are fantastic. They'll answer anything that you need to know. All of our advocacy information is on there. How you can get involved with National Mortgage Broker Day is on there. But we're really excited, and we're excited to see you next week. Chris you're gonna be on a panel at Training Day for National Mortgage Broker Day with a couple of our other industry leaders. So there's gonna be some really great information next week for people that we'll then be sharing with everyone after the event. A lot of fundraising next week, so get ready, everybody. We do have one fundraiser a year for our advocacy work, and it's next week. So we've got some very big goals, but we're very excited about what the future holds.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. We're appreciative. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, I'll see you
celebrate
Sunday.
this big week. See you guys. Thanks for joining Coaching with Chris. If you need any more information about AIME, Katie's told you where to go. I'll make sure I include all of the links, or you can just reach out to Windsor and we'll get you connected right away. Have a great day, everybody.